Welcome to Moonlight Myths, where you'll hear stories about myths, monsters, and look into worlds beyond ours. Before we get started, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Then let the story take you on a moonlit path into your imagination, or maybe, into the realm of reality itself. Today we're going to talk about one of the most fascinating figures from ancient scripture, Eve. Whether you're religious, spiritual, or just interested in mythology and how stories shape culture, Eve's story is worth exploring. She's been talked about, debated, painted, written about, and reinterpreted for thousands of years. But who was she, really? What does her story actually say, and what does it mean? Let's walk through her story together, not as a theological debate, but as an exploration of this ancient narrative and the many ways people have understood it over time. Eve appears in the creation story as the first woman and as Adam's companion. The story presents the world before her arrival as somehow incomplete, specifically, incomplete without relationship. Adam is there, but he's alone, and the text describes this aloneness as not good. Here's where it gets interesting. Eve is formed from Adam's side. Now, you've probably heard the phrase, Adam's rib, and that's become this whole thing in popular culture. But when you look at the symbolism here, it's really about closeness and connection. She's not made from his head to rule over him, not from his feet to be beneath him, but from his side, right there next to him. It's an image of shared substance, mutual belonging, and partnership. There's also this word that gets translated as helper in many English versions, and that word has caused a lot of confusion over the years. In the original Hebrew, the word is ezer, and it's actually a really strong term. It's used elsewhere in the Bible to describe God helping people. It's not about being subordinate or lesser. It means a strong counterpart, someone who stands face to face with you as an equal presence. That reframes things quite a bit, doesn't it? Eve, like Adam, is described as part of a creation that's good, whole, and intentionally formed. Her arrival answers this fundamental human need we all have, for companionship, for connection, for shared life. And in the garden, Adam and Eve are depicted as joint caretakers. They share the responsibility for the garden's balance and flourishing. Their early life reflects this beautiful harmony between relationship, work, and the sacred. Now we come to probably the most famous part of Eve's story, her encounter with the serpent and the tree of knowledge. Eve is the one who meets the serpent and has this conversation about the tree that's associated with knowledge and awareness. The serpent questions what God said, suggests that eating the fruit won't actually bring death but will open their eyes and make them like God, knowing good and evil. Here's something really interesting that some ancient traditions have pointed out. Eve may have actually received the original command about not eating from the tree secondhand, through Adam. If that's the case, there's room for misunderstanding rather than outright defiance. Think about it. Have you ever played telephone? Information gets distorted. This possibility reframes the moment as one that's shaped by incomplete information and vulnerability, not necessarily rebellion. Eve's choice in this moment reflects something very human, curiosity and a desire for understanding. And honestly, those impulses show up in mythological traditions all over the world. Humans want to know things. We want to understand. We push boundaries. Her decision can be read as part of this fundamental human drive to move beyond innocence into awareness. After she eats, she shares the fruit with Adam. This is important. She's acting within the bond of their partnership, their shared destiny. She doesn't keep this experience to herself, she brings him into it. Here's where Adam's part of the story gets really interesting. The text suggests that Adam eats the fruit knowingly. He's not tricked. He makes a conscious decision. Many interpretations over the centuries have seen his choice as being shaped by loyalty, by love, by fear of separation from Eve. Think about what that means for a second. Adam had already experienced what it was like to be alone. Remember, the story tells us that loneliness was not good. Eve had become his entire world, his companion, his partner in tending the garden. And now she's done this thing, crossed this line, and what are his options? Stand apart from her? Watch her face whatever comes next alone? Or step into it with her? In this reading, Adam chooses solidarity with Eve over standing apart from her. He chooses her. He chooses their bond over his own safety, over his own innocence. There's something both beautiful and tragic about that, isn't there? It's the kind of choice people make in relationships all the time, choosing to stay connected even when it costs us something, even when it might not be the safe choice. When they both eat, something fundamental shifts. They become aware of themselves in a new way. This is the moment of self-consciousness, of vulnerability, of seeing themselves as separate beings who can be seen and judged. Before this, there was this unself-conscious wholeness to their existence. They were naked and unashamed, the text says. But now, everything's different. Their immediate responses tell you everything about what that awareness brings. They cover themselves. They make clothes out of fig leaves. And then, this is so human, they hide. They hear God walking in the garden, and instead of running to meet him like they presumably had before, they hide among the trees. There's suddenly this weight to being seen, to being known. Shame enters the picture. Fear enters the picture. The easy intimacy of before is gone. And then comes the confrontation, and this is where things get really heartbreaking. When God asks what happened, when the questions come, Adam, who just chose solidarity with Eve, who just ate the fruit alongside her out of love and loyalty, turns from intimacy toward blame. The woman you gave me, he says, she gave me the fruit, and I ate it. Let that sink in. The woman you gave me. He's not just blaming Eve. He's subtly blaming God too. And he's creating distance from the person he just chose to stand with. This is described as the first fracture in human relationship. That beautiful harmony we talked about earlier, that face-to-face equality, that shared purpose, it's breaking right before our eyes. The awareness they gained didn't just show them good and evil in some abstract sense. It showed them self-protection. It showed them how to deflect responsibility. It showed them how to put their own survival ahead of relationship. That's part of what the knowledge cost them. The consequences come next, and they're significant. Let's talk about what Eve specifically experiences, because it's often misunderstood or reduced to simple punishment. Eve experiences consequences tied to childbirth, to relationship, and to longing. The text says she'll have pain in childbearing, and if you've ever been through childbirth or witnessed it, you know that's not an exaggeration. But there's more to it than physical pain. The consequences also touch on relationship dynamics. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. Here's where interpretation gets really important. Many scholars understand this not as God prescribing how things should be, but as God describing how things will be, how the harmony has been broken. The story describes a distortion of the partnership that existed before. That face-to-face equality, that mutual caretaking we talked about? This is describing what happens when that balance gets thrown off. It's often understood not as the way things were meant to be, but as a departure from the original design, a consequence of the fracture that's occurred. Think about it this way. The story began with relationship as the solution to loneliness, with Eve as a strong counterpart. Now we're seeing relationship itself become complicated, strained, marked by power imbalances and longing that doesn't quite connect. It's describing the brokenness that enters into even our most intimate bonds. But here's what's crucial, and it's something that often gets overlooked. Adam and Eve leave the garden together. They're not separated. The emphasis in the narrative is on shared fate, not isolated guilt. Yes, they both face consequences. Adam gets his own set related to work and the ground and mortality, but they face them together. They're still in this together, for better or worse. And then Adam does something really meaningful, something that shows us Eve's worth hasn't been erased by what happened. After everything, after the serpent, after the fruit, after the blame, after the consequences, Adam names his wife Eve. Names in ancient Hebrew culture were deeply significant. They carried meaning, they defined identity and purpose. And the name he gives her? It means life. Chava in Hebrew, related to the word for living. He's affirming her role as the bearer of humanity's future. Despite everything that's happened, despite the pain and the loss and the exile from the garden, she represents continuity. She represents possibility. She represents the ongoing story of humanity. That's not the action of someone who sees his wife as just the one who ruined everything. That's recognition, that's honor, that's an acknowledgement that the story doesn't end here. Life goes on. Humanity goes on. And Eve is central to that continuation. So what happens after the garden? Eve is remembered as the mother of all living. Her legacy across traditions is grounded in continuity and life, in the fact that humanity continues. She's the origin of the human lineage, and she's honored for that rather than being reduced to just that one moment with the fruit. Later stories imagine Adam and Eve continuing their lives together. They grieve together after the death of their son Abel. They're learning what mortality means for the first time. There's this ancient tale where a raven teaches them how to bury the dead. Can you imagine? They're watching, learning, figuring out how to honor death because they've never had to do it before. It portrays Eve as observant, receptive, capable of learning from the world around her. Life after the garden is marked by labor and endurance. Eve and Adam face hardship together. Their story continues through parenting, through loss, through resilience and survival. It's not just about one mistake and then it's over. It's a full human life with all its complexity. Here's where it gets really fascinating, how Eve has been remembered and interpreted across different traditions and throughout history. Some traditions portray Eve as courageous. In these readings, she's the one whose choice opened the door to meaningful human existence beyond innocence. Without her choice, humanity would have stayed in a kind of eternal childhood. There's no growth, no moral awareness, no real choice without the knowledge of good and evil. Other traditions emphasize that she was deceived and vulnerable rather than rebellious. This softens the moral portrayal. She's not this villain figure, she's human and she made a mistake. In later theological symbolism, Eve becomes part of a larger pattern of loss and restoration that runs throughout sacred storytelling. Many Christian traditions, for example, see parallels between Eve and Mary, creating this cycle of fall and redemption. Psychological and mythic interpretations view Eve as a symbol of humanity's awakening into moral awareness and responsibility. From this perspective, eating from the tree of knowledge isn't primarily about sin, it's about becoming fully human, about gaining the capacity to make moral choices. And in more recent times, feminist and modern readings have often reclaimed Eve as a seeker of truth and an early figure of agency. She's the one who asks questions, who wants to know more, who makes a choice rather than passively accepting the status quo. So here's the thing about Eve: across cultures, across centuries, across countless interpretations, she remains this complex mythic figure who reflects some of our deepest human experiences. The longing for knowledge, the power and pain of love, the search for meaning, the complexity of choice and consequence. Whether you read her story as religious truth, as mythology, as metaphor, or as cultural artifact, there's something in it that speaks to the human condition. We're all navigating the tension between innocence and awareness, between connection and separation, between the choices we make and the consequences we live with. Eve's story isn't simple, and that's exactly why it's endured. It holds space for multiple meanings, for ongoing interpretation, for each generation to find something new in it.